Hello and welcome to my channel. If this is your first time here, my name is Millie and happy Multichrome Monday. If you don't know what that is a series I do here on my channel almost every Monday, pretty much every Monday at this point, where I feature different multichromes from all different kinds of brands. I do swatches, swatch comparisons, tutorials, anything and everything that has to do with multichromes. And today's video is going to be a very detailed video on the Clionadh stained glass collection. Clionadh is going to be restocking the entire stained glass collection as well as having a sale, and it will start November 19th at 3 p.m. Eastern Time and go through to December 3rd, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And I do have a non-affiliate code with Clionadh Cosmetics. It is Millie10 in case you are shopping the restock and the sale. So before we get into all the details, I did want to mention, like, I have all the shades. You don't need these shades. You don't need any of these shades at all, even. I have a channel and Instagram and TikTok, you name it, and I love multichromes, so I have all of these. I did buy 90% of these myself. There's a couple of shades that were sent to me from Clionadh. Thank you so much for Clionadh. So 2 shades from the Iridescent series. 1 multichromes came with my very first Clionadh order a long time ago, back when it took 5 months to get the eyeshadows, which it's much faster now. They've been making many more, and there's actually times, if you peek on the Clionadh website, that there's shades that are actually not sold out and you can snag them and they're ready to ship. I already have so many different videos on Clionadh Cosmetics and their multichrome eyeshadows, and I already have tons and tons of videos featuring Clionadh Cosmetics and the stained glass collection, but this one's going to be a bit more in detail. I'm going to be swatching for you every single shade in their collection except for 4 shades that are part of the Iridescent 1 series. I do not have 4 of those. I do have the other 4, and I'm also going to be showing you some comparison swatches between the different types of multichromes within the Clionadh stained glass line. I'm not going to be doing swatch comparisons to other brands. I have so many videos on those already. Some videos are even specifically dedicated to the jewel multichromes from Clionadh, as well as a video where I compared all the different iridescent multichromes from Clionadh, from Terra, Devinah, you name it. There's a video for that as well. I will link down a bunch of videos in the description box, so please make sure to check the description box if you're specifically looking for comparisons between different brands. There's over 90 multichrome eyeshadows in the stained glass collection, and they're actually going to be adding more shades in the beginning of 2022, so there's just absolutely no way I could have fit in here into this video 90 different comparison swatches. But also there's constantly different multichromes coming out. I'm buying new multichromes, and every time I buy new multichromes I do comparison swatches. So if you are interested in some shades from, for example, the Terra Fall Equinox bundle, then just search that in the bar with my name in it and you will find my video, and there's going to be swatch comparisons, and that will go for pretty much all the multichromes from Devinah and Terra especially. Those are covered. And then there's of course some other indie brands that are a little bit less well known. Let's get into some swatches, these swatch comparisons between the formulas, and then at the end of the video I'm actually going to be ranking all the different formulas that Clionadh has in the jeweled stained glass collection, and then I'll give you some of my recommendations at the end of the video. And there will be timestamps below, so let's get started. First up are the deep iridescent multichromes. These are all very smooth. I would say that Verte and Vermilion have the most prominent shift, with Burnt Sienna close behind. These are very vibrant, very shiny. You can see that they have somewhat of a base, but it's a very light base. Next up we have the vibrant multichromes. I split these into 2 sets. So here are the greens and the blue. These 4 are all very smooth. I would say equally smooth. The shades that have the most obvious shift are Lineage and Courtyard. These are all very vibrant, very shiny. I think these 2 are probably the shiniest, and then these 2 seem like they're just a little bit less shiny. Could depend on my swatch. Next up is the other set of vibrant multichromes, with the exception of Regal, which is actually a vibrant glitter type of multichrome, and this is the only one so far that is called a vibrant glitter, so I'm assuming they're going to be probably coming out with more shades like this. Can't imagine this would be the only shade with that type. And you can see it's extremely beautiful. It's very dimensional, very shifty. I would say these are all pretty equally shiny and shifty. And I love that they have that colored base without it being dark. Next up we have the pastel multichromes. These are probably the least shiny out of all of Clionadh's multichromes. They are more of a satin sheen. The shift is definitely there, but it is pretty soft. But these are great for anyone who doesn't want anything too smoky or too vibrant, a little bit more wearable, if you will. But they are still really beautiful. I really love the shift on Cathedral. It's just such interesting tones. Next up are the hybrid multichromes, and these I'm splitting into 2 sets as well. So this is the first set, which we have purple, green, and a gold. So these are described as a merge of jeweled multichromes and glitter multichromes. So these are not as dark as jeweled multichromes, and they have more of that sparkle as the glitter multichrome. So you can see there's still a bit of a base. Now, even though these feel very smooth, they feel just a little bit different to the touch of the deep iridescent multichromes. Also have a very subtle base, but it's a little bit more of like a gray base, and they're really shiny in a different way. So these are still a bit darker, and they are darker than most of the glitter multichromes. Next up is the other set of the hybrid multichromes. These are the pinks and purples, and you can see which ones are kind of the most shifty. Definitely Mosaic is absolutely stunning. And in the swatch, it felt more similar to the texture of the deep iridescent multichromes. Even maybe with this one as well. And this one, just the shift isn't as strong, and I don't prefer this color personally. If you were stuck in between these shades, I would definitely opt for this one. And then for this one, if you wanted a blue, but this one just doesn't wow me as some of these other shades. Next up, we have the glitter multichromes. There's 23 of these, so I'm splitting them into color family, like some of the other swatches. So these might look a little bit similar in the pan, but you can see they have quite a bit of a different effect once they're actually swatched. These two being the darkest. This one has like a blue, reddish, purple base. And then these three are the most sheer. Love the shift of glaze. It's really unexpected, especially with these other shades. So for the most part, the glitter formula, while it does smooth out when you swatch it, it is definitely a little bit chunky. And I don't mean like a dry, chunky, like really, really chunky. You can kind of see in the pan, they just do look a little bit, you know, not as smooth as usual. This one is actually pretty smooth. Here are the blues and the green. There's some variation in the base colors. Some of them have a brownish base or almost reddish brown base. Some of them don't. They're just full color, such as this one. I think it's teal. And these two are pretty translucent, but all very, very shiny. I would like to point out that out of all of these, I would say these two felt the chunkiest. And then these on felt a bit smoother. You can also kind of see in the pan, this one looks much smoother than this one. But again, they smooth out as you apply them. Next up are the pinks. There's lots of pinks to choose from. Again, variation from base to no base. Really the darkest two being these two up here. This one is much shinier and almost very sparkly. You can really see some major sparkles throughout it from my angle at least, but it doesn't have necessarily a base to it. It's just the color. And then these two, almost these three, are a bit more iridescent. Sunbeam is actually one of my least favorite shades because last time I used it on the lid, and I used it with the Fernie Pixie Epoxy, it just wasn't really that impactful for me. I don't know what it was. It didn't even look pink anymore. So not my favorite. Also feel like this one is probably not the best shifting either. Like the shift is very, very subtle, which is something obviously that you might enjoy, you might actually look for. Lastly, from the glitter multichromes, we have some leftover pinks. They're a bit more peachy, so that's why they're here instead of the other shades, even though this one is actually quite pink. And then there's Opulent, which is kind of the outlier here, and then these three are pretty similar. The shifts are obviously different, but kind of straight on, they just have slightly different variation in tone. And I would like to say these four felt the chunkiest, while these two felt really smooth. This one actually reminds me very much of the deep iridescent, like even the way it looks swatched. It's actually interesting that it's part of the glitter multichromes. Next up are the jeweled multichromes. There's 20 of these shades, and I'm splitting them up by color. So here are the most similar kind of shades. I feel like maybe Patina should have gone with the green shades, but it's fine. So these are all super, super shiny, super metallic, very, very smooth. Very smooth. Definitely some tonal differences. Out of all the jeweled multichromes, these three are the least shifty, with Patina being a strong runner-up, but definitely more shifty. So it looks the same this way when you're looking on straight at it. And then there's a green in there that I see. And then a blue. Next up we have purples and blues. Again, super shiny, very pigmented, very dark. And I would say these two shades are extremely similar. You definitely don't need both of these. Just pick whichever tone you prefer. This one looks like a darker purple. Onto the greens and the teals. So these two are more tealish. These are more true to green. Again, different tones of green. And then somewhat similar and then very different shifts between all of these. These two have a very similar shift, but different tones for sure. Even the shift is a different tone. These are all very, very smooth. Super shiny. I do think that Anil is the least shiniest, at least for me. This is the last set. We've got the pinks and the reds. I put Gargoyle with this set, which really it should have been with the greens, but it does have like a silver tone to it. You can see it. It's just not really anything like any of the other green shades anyways, so I think that's why I put it in with this set. Just also you can see in comparison to Weld, which those two might look somewhat similar. These are all extremely shiny. Smolder, of course, one of the most common types of black-based multichromes you see. Just about everybody and anyone has some sort of a version of that shade for sure. Weld is a little bit harder, and then some of these others are also pretty common. These two shades, which I don't remember off the top of my head what they're called, you'd think that by now I would know, but these two are like the least shiny out of this set. I mean, I think you can kind of see it. Here are the Series 1 Iridescent. These are one of my least favorite because they're just not really that shiny, especially in comparison to their other iridescent multichromes. Also, some of them, the shift is just a bit more subtle. Also, that's why I only have 4 out of the 8 shades, so it is not a complete set, but it kind of gives you an idea of what these are in texture. Very, very smooth. This shade was extremely hard to try to swatch. Really interesting kind of tone and shift in it because it is like a taupey silvery shade that goes into a green, but it has a little bit of pink in it as well. It's really interesting, that's for sure. So I personally am not into this kind of finish. I think this would be nice for a very smooth like highlighter, but on the lid they're not going to give you as much impact as some of these other shades, so it all is dependent on your preference. Next up are the glitter type multichromes. See what I mean? These are just wow, in your face, super, super shiny. Absolutely gorgeous. These are for the most part very chunky. Out of all of these, Glint is the least chunky. You can even see it. I made sure to leave kind of the chunkiness on. Gilding, this one picks up super chunky. I had to kind of wipe off my finger onto the pan to try to get some off because I picked up too much. So everything else is quite chunky. So this is something to keep in mind with these kinds of shades. But these are just so stunning. There's definitely some similarity between these two shades, so you could pick and choose kind of which ones you want. If you want chunky, if you don't want chunky. They're obviously not exactly the same, but I feel like they're similar enough. Same with these two shades, somewhat similar, different shifts. And then we've got a very beautiful blue versus a purple. There's another purple, but this is like a more blue purple, and this is more of like a straight, like a pinky purple. And lastly, we have these Series 2 Iridescent Multichromes. These are, for the most part, very smooth. Some of them a little chunkier, but not as quite as chunky as the glitter type. By any means, these are definitely much less chunky than all of those. So I kind of have them in the order of the smoothest to chunkiest. So starting about here, they start to get just a little bit chunky, but really they smooth out beautifully. As you can see, there's no really like flaky residue like on Gilding, for example. We have some similarities of these two shades, especially right here. Definitely don't think you need both of these. And then these two are a bit similar as well. It's really gonna come down to your preference in texture and colors. And I'm sure I might have said that a million times in this video at this point. So first up for comparisons, we have Engrave and Torch, which are both glitter multichromes. And then we have Mosaic and Roseline, which are both hybrid multichromes. So you can see how these all look color-wise next to each other, as well as the shifts. Torch and Roseline do seem to have a similar shift, but they do have a different tone when they're straight on. Next set of comparisons, Emboss and Blaze, which are glitter, Vermilion and Burnt Sienna, which are deep iridescent, and then Eris, which is a hybrid. So these are all pretty smooth. I really feel like Blaze and Vermilion just have both of that like grayish base, and they're also very, very vibrant, but you can see Emboss is pretty sparkly. Compared to Vermilion and Burnt Sienna, it just doesn't have that smoothness to it. Next up is Glazier's Mark, which is a glitter multichrome, then Medieval, which is a hybrid, Embroidery is another hybrid, and Verte, which is a deep iridescent. You can tell from the swatches that Medieval and Embroidery have a much darker base. Even though there's still somewhat of a base in Glacier's Mark and Verte. It's just not as dark, and Glacier's Mark is very sparkly and shiny, and Verte is very smooth and metallic and vibrant. Next up is Tapestry, which is a hybrid, Abrasion, which is a glitter, Shard, which is a hybrid, Azure, which is a deep iridescent, and Grisaille, which is a glitter. So you can definitely see the difference in texture here. The glitters are very, very sparkly. They do have a base to them, but they're not very dark. Hybrid, this shade in particular, isn't exactly the shiniest. And neither is Tapestry, though if anything it is shinier than Shard. And Azure is actually probably the least of the super vibrant deep iridescent. Like, it doesn't really have the same effect as the other shades in that line. On to Ornamental and Corrosion, which are both glitter multichromes. Chalice, which is a hybrid multichrome. Ochre, which is a deep iridescent, and Foiling, which is a glitter. So you can see the difference in formulas for sure, because the glitters are super, super sparkly. They just have those flecks in it. They're really, really reflective. But so is Ochre, but it's definitely got like a smoothness to it and a different kind of vibrancy and shine compared to the glitters. And the hybrid does have some sparkle in it, but it is the least shiniest out of all of these. Now we have the iridescent comparisons. So we have Spectrum and Lux, which are series 2, Gilding and Glint, which are glitter type, and Phosphorescent, which is also series 2. So you can see that Gilding is extremely flaky. It's probably like the closest thing to like a pressed flake, while the rest of these are pretty smooth. The series 2 shades being the smoothest, but Glint, which is also a glitter type, is relatively smooth compared to Gilding at least. Color-wise, I think you can probably choose, 2 of these. I don't think you would need all of these. There's some similarities. The shifts are pretty different, but there are some similarities. Aura by far is the smoothest out of these. Just so smooth, so shiny. Really beautiful shift as well. Glisten is very interesting because it looks like it has like a yellowy green base to it, especially when I turn this way. It's an interesting iridescent. And Gloaming is so shiny, so shiny and sparkly, but it doesn't feel as smooth as Aura. Gleam was definitely a bit more textured and not as smooth, though it does smooth out once you actually like swatch it and spread it. But Luminaire and Ray were much smoother, as you can see. They even look smoother on the hand. There's just a little bit of different kind of look to them. And something else these swatch comparisons show you is how Luminaire, which is series 1, it has a very subtle shift. It's not that shiny. This one looks pretty shiny here, but it's not that shiny. It's not that shifty, especially compared to Ray. I mean, Ray just makes it look like a duochrome or something. When I swatched these, Fluorescent and Glow actually had a very similar texture, a little bit on the flaky side, so it's not that all series 2 are completely smooth. They can still be a little chunky, but for the most part, the glitter types are a bit more chunky. And then Glimmer, for example, which is a glitter type, smooth out pretty nicely. Like, you wouldn't even be able to tell that that's a glitter type. Maybe I should have put on like another layer or something. But these are some that I thought were similar, these two, and I just put them all on one hand in one swatch. Last up for the comparisons, we have Flicker, which is a series 1, Chromatic, which is series 2, and Halo, which is also series 2. And these are all very smooth, with Flicker being the smoothest. With Flicker being the least shiny, it's really more just like a sheen. Shift is a bit hard to see. And I think straight on, these all look pretty similar. The shifts are a little bit different, but you definitely don't need all 3 of these shades from each of the formulas. I think you could just do with one or the other. This one looks to have the most strongest shift. So now that you've seen all the swatches of the different formulas, I'm going to be just ranking all the different formulas, keeping in mind my preference, so other people's rankings would probably be different than mine. This is not like a one-all be-all. So there's 9 different formulas, and in place number 9, come the Iridescent Series 1, which are the ones I actually only have the 4 shades instead of all 8. And there's a reason for that. I just felt like I didn't need to buy the rest of the 4 shades. I just feel like some of these are a little bit similar to some of these, and they just don't really pack as much of a punch as I would like to now, having touched these and used these. Like, these are just so much shinier and more reflective and more shifty than these. So I just didn't feel like I needed to complete the bundle because it is not my favorite formula. It's not very shiny, like I said. So in 8th place is actually the Pastel Multichromes. Don't get me wrong, I love these. I did a whole dedicated video where I did a look with each of these shades, and I think they're very underrated. However, they're not my favorite, but also there's only 4 shades. I think I'm more likely to reach for something shiny, but I think that there's such a great option for anybody who wants something a little bit more subtle, that doesn't quite want anything as sparkly as the glitter multichromes and doesn't want anything as dark as the jeweled multichromes. In 7th place are the hybrid multichromes. I think they're nice, and I think they're a great option because they are hybrid between the glitters and the jeweled. However, not all of them are quite the shine that I look for, and I would just rather use some of the other formulas over them. So they're not like really something I reach for a lot. And as you saw in the comparison swatches, some of them are a little bit similar to some of the other formulas, so I think I would just rather reach for the other formula if I wanted that particular shade. But I think they're still really nice, and they're also, I believe they're less priced than, you know, jeweled multichromes. I actually don't remember the price off the top of my head. They're a great less pricey option. However, I don't think they're the most unique. So in 6th place is the glitter type formula, which the easiest way to remember those is they all start with the letter G, and I love them. They're so metallic, so shiny. You can see in the swatches different particle size from the iridescent series 2, and the reason really that this is number 6 is because I prefer a smoother formula when it comes to, in general, like multichromes. When eyeshadows are chunkier and a little bit flakier, it's just easier to over apply, and if you use too much, they do definitely accentuate skin texture. So that's really the only reason, but they are so shiny, so beautiful. They are shinier than the series 2 iridescent, and color wise there are some similarities between the 2 formulas, so that is something to keep in mind. So in 4th place are the vibrant multichromes, which is this set up here. There is one kind of outlier here, which is Regal, and that is a shade they added later. It's technically not a vibrant multichrome, it's a vibrant glitter multichrome, so it does have that like extra shine, just more similar texture to the glitter multichromes, because the rest of these are very smooth. These are so fun. These are very beautiful. I love that there's like a really bright, colorful option for multichromes, and there's, you know, not only the very deep black based jeweled types of multichromes. I think these are really fun, especially for spring and summer. However, I think something about the fact that they're so bright makes these shifts a little less obvious. Some of the shades have a more obvious shift than others, and some of them are just kind of like, I just feel like it doesn't really translate, especially on the lid. Like you'll see kind of more of a duochrome effect than a multichrome. So that's why they didn't make it in my top 3 formulas. So in 3rd place are the glitter multichromes, which are 23 shades. That's so many shades. They're probably going to be adding more, which I can't even imagine what other kind of colors. It is definitely a little bit like pink and purple heavy. So there are some gaps that could be filled. I mean, these are just so deliciously sparkly and shiny. There's absolutely no actual glitter. It's just a way to describe their nature. So they're just so shiny, very sparkly. They do feel a little bit, I would say I would compare them to that Pat McGrath formula, where it's just like a little bit looser. There's some really beautiful shades in these glitter multichromes. The only thing is some of them are a little less shifty, but because they're so shiny and beautiful, and you can really layer them too, because some of them are a little bit more sheer without being an iridescent multichrome per se. So those are number 3. Number 2 are the jeweled multichromes. I know, I think if I did this over a year ago, I would have picked the jeweled multichromes as my number 1. But listen, they've been knocked down to number 2. So if you know the last formula from Clionadh that is left, that will be number 1. The jeweled multichromes will always stay very close to my heart. There's something so magical about them. They're by far the shiftiest ones, for sure. Like you can really easily see the shift. I think it's because they're super bright and so metallic. They look like liquid metal, and some of my just favorite colors are in here as well. I think these just like really will turn heads. They're so much fun to wear because people will be looking at your lids, and one moment it's green and another moment it's red. Like you just never know. And I forgot to mention there's 20 shades, 3 of which are a bit less shifty. They're still very dimensional, but they're not per se, like they're nothing close to Smolder, for example. Like Smolder has got to be like one of the most beautiful kinds of shifts out there, and that's probably why it's also the most common shift out there. And I almost forgot to mention, I did do a video where I talked about what are the shiftiest multichrome eyeshadows, and it has a lot to do with color. So definitely check that video out if you are curious. So then number 1 place are the deep iridescent multichromes. And this is just like a new thing in 2021 where they've become my favorite. Oh, they're so beautiful. Okay, one shade I'm not the biggest fan, and that's Azure. I believe there's different kinds of pronunciations. I'm pretty sure that in Spanish it would be Azure. So I've been pronouncing it that way, but I think in English it's Azure, so I need to like drill that into my mind. That one is like the least super, super vibrant and beautiful and shiny. I love that these have such a really like interesting grayish base, but it's just like, it's so flattering no matter what kind of matte you put in the crease and you blend it into. You don't have to worry about anything. Like with the black base multichromes, the black base blending into like a gray and could potentially muddy up with the crease shade. There are other brands such as Terra that have released shades that are exactly like this, so clearly it's going to be something very popular going forward, which I'm really excited about. And I really, really hope that some of the shades that Clionadh does add in the beginning of 2022 will be this formula, because I need way more of these. I just can't rave enough about these. Some of these have a more obvious shift than others, but for the most part, the shift is very, very obvious, and it's just so dimensional. Like the way that this eyeshadow reflects light similar to the jeweled multichromes is just absolutely stunning. So that's my ranking. Now let's talk about some recommendations. Listen, every time someone asks me what I would recommend, it's such a loaded question because it's not really that simple, because I have different makeup preferences from you, from other people, from everyone else. The colors I like to wear on myself, some people might not wear. And then it also depends what kind of textures you're looking for. Do you want something really, really metallic and very smooth? Do you want something just so, so shiny, sparkly? You want it to be the flakiest possible? You want aliens from space to see your Clionadh eyeshadow on your lids? Like, there's just so many different levels. And I did do a shopping guide video, which was pretty much just me being on the website and kind of making recommendations. Again, recommending whatever kind of eyeshadow color you like to wear and then what kind of formula you would prefer. But I didn't do any swatches in that video and people were very, very mad. So I'm going to give you a couple of shade names. I did do a live last year where I talked about if I could only keep 10 multi-chrome shades. So it was kind of a mixture of different brands. And that probably changed the next day. However, that's still valid because those shades are still standout if I even mention them at all. So let's say your favorite color is purple, but you don't like to wear green, then I would stay away from any multi-chromes that you saw in the swatches that shifted between blue and purple. Only look at the multi-chromes that don't have those shifts, so anything other than a green. So let's talk about some unique shades slash my recommendations. Some of these vivid shades do have some slightly similar shades between Terra and maybe Shine by SD. I'll link some videos down below, but Bloodline is such a stunning shade. It's really, I don't even know, like every time I look at it, I just freeze. Like I don't even know how to describe it. There's so much happening. It's probably one of the shiftiest ones here. If you love purple, you're gonna love Royal and Regal. Like, I mean, they're just so stunning. Do you need both of them? No. One is lighter than the other and the shift is different. So I would just kind of pick between which one based on the swatches you preferred. From the deep iridescent, I would pretty much recommend any of these except for Azure, unless you absolutely love the blue and you don't mind that it's not the most vibrant and the shiniest. You've got a perfect green, you got a perfect orange, you got a perfect pink to gold, and then a green. If you love green, you're gonna love Verte, trust me. And with any of these, you can use these freely on the lid. There's gonna be no like muddiness or anything. You can pair these with color from mattes. So let's talk about the iridescent multichromes. You can use these as a highlight. You can use these in the inner corner, under the brow, what have you. Just put them everywhere. They're so freaking beautiful. You can layer them over black eyeshadow to really get them to pop, or you could also layer them over different colorful mattes. I actually have a video where I layered one iridescent multichrome over different colored mattes to see how it affected the shift, and it was really, really interesting because definitely some shades will bring out the color depending on what the shift is. So if you have a green multichrome, you put it over green, it's gonna bring out the green. Now, as to probably my least recommended would be the series 1, but again, like you might want that. You might prefer that over these like super, super chunky and super shiny and reflective multichrome, so you might actually like enjoy these. So obviously take it with a grain of salt, but I would personally opt for some of these other shades, again depending on your textural preferences as well as your color preferences. And again, I do have a video where I compared all of these shades to Devinah and Terra Moons, so there is a bunch of dupes across. For the most part, I'm pretty sure they're all duped out, so I would definitely keep that in mind if you're looking at buying these, making sure you don't buy the same shade twice. Some of my favorites are definitely UV, while the shift in that shade in general across other brands as well is not the most obvious. It's just such a beautiful, beautiful tone of purple. It's almost like if snow didn't sparkle blue, but it sparkled purple. Like, that's what I imagine, like a really magical purple land with snow that sparkles in UV. And Ray is a dupe to Red Giant from Terra Moon, so if you have either of those, obviously don't get the other, but that is just in general one of my favorite kinds of shades when it comes to iridescent shadows. It's just something so special about it. It really just looks so ethereal and very like cosmic. The other two shades that I gravitate to is Gilding, because it's just so shiny. It is chunky though. And then Luxe is also really stunning, but I have these shades over and over again, so it's kind of hard to pick a favorite. So now back into this bigger palette. From the pastel multichromes, I would say only get these if you don't want any, like if any of this looks threatening. If you don't really see yourself wearing any of these other formulas, then Cathedral is such an interesting shade. Pinky look to it, and it shifts green, and it's super cool on the lid. You can put like a cool tone matte in the crease and put this all over your lid, and you will have just such a beautiful dimensional look. It's not too shifty, it's not too shiny, it's like a great in between. And then from the hybrids, I don't know, honestly, from the hybrids, I would probably opt for some of these other shades. However, this shade, I don't remember all these shades. You'd think I know, but for Mosaic is really beautiful. This shade as well, but I know again in the comparisons, Chalice, some of them are a little bit similar to each other. This is really dangerous to be holding them. Don't do this. And then from the glitter multichromes, Opulent, first one that comes to mind, probably one of the most unique shades in the entire stained glass collection. There's honestly been so many different multichromes that have come out at this point. I can dupe out most shades in here. You know, it's been a couple of years since the stained glass collection launched, but you have so many beautiful, really shiny textures. Some of these are not that shifty. This shade is really stunning. Oh geez, oh geez. I know everyone else is holding their breath like I am. Glazed is really stunning. And then Chill and Ripple, really beautiful. I'm not really sure what other ones of these are really unique. I feel like I've seen these kinds of shades right here, the green ones, quite a bit. And as for the jeweled multichromes, at this point I can dupe out most of these. I have a video where I actually talked about which ones were the hardest to dupe out of all 20 of them. So I swatch compared all 20 of these shades with different multichromes from different brands. Vermeil, Burnished, and Weathered are the ones that I don't have really dupes for. They're a bit harder to find, however, they're the least shifty. And they almost like don't have a black base, like they just have like their own thing. Like they're definitely more jeweled and darker, but like I just feel like when I blend those out, they're not necessarily the same as if I like blend out Smolder or something. Weld is another one of my absolute favorites. I have some similar dupes. I haven't been able to like completely dupe it out, but it is such a unique jewel multichrome, really stunning. I've also come to love Gargoyle and Patina. Smolder Forever, such a beautiful multichrome. And also have videos where I actually compare these to other shades on the lid. So same shades from different brands, and even just from swatches, every time anyone sees a jeweled multichrome swatched compared to other black-based multichromes from other brands, these are just so much shinier. There's really something just special about these. There's some sort of sorcery happening, I'm convinced. So I feel like I've been talking for about an hour, but I really hope that you found this video helpful in case you're interested in the restock and the sale coming up from Clionadh. And if you do plan on shopping, I do have a non-affiliate code with Clionadh. It is Millie10, and that will send you 10% off. However, there are some restrictions. I believe the code does not work on the stained glass collection, but it does work on the round pans. So that's everything for this video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And if you're new to my channel, I would love it if you subscribe. There's so much multichrome content up already on my channel and much more to come you don't want to miss out. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time.